Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Making Chitwood Live, powered by BNI. In this episode, we're talking with Ryan Hunt with The Body Shop. Not only does he do automotive body work, but also he has several other businesses and has some really unique things to share with you about how BNI has really worked for him. So let's get started. All right. And as just a reminder, you can catch us every week live at 11 o'clock Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And then also you can catch the replays on LinkedIn as well as Instagram. So with that, Ryan, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So tell us a little bit about your business, The Body Shop.
Okay. Yeah. Started the Body Shop Collision Repair Center in 1998. It was actually 3 years after I graduated high school. We started our first company. 23 going on 24 years now. So it's been like anything else, a roller coaster, but we've made it through and everything's just trucking right on along. So we started out just as a two-man operation back in 98 and since has expanded to a full-blown collision center with body techs, painters, and actually, as we speak, doing an expansion on the building right now, growing. So everything's going well.
And you both started as actually doing the work yourselves. So you started kind of as the technician as you worked your way into building the business. What was that like?
Yes, that's exactly right. Blood, sweat, and tears. That's what that was like starting out. So it was one of those things to where there's probably a lot of people with similar stories, guys that enjoyed working on cars. So started back probably 13, 14 years old of just kind of piddling in the garage with my dad. And after going on, for a few more years, and one of the things that was key to me is my dad would come home sometimes and he would have a buddy car that he worked with that needed a little something done to it. And I would help him with it. And one of the real turning points for me was one day he went out of town and there was a small job there that I just worked on and finished it. He came back and I was 15, 16 years old. And it paid several $100s. And that's when the light went off. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I might be onto something here. So from that point, worked in two collision centers. And at the second one is where I met my business partner. And after working there for a year and a half, 2 years, he and I just got to talking. And it was like, hey, we think we can do this. We should open up our own shop. And a few months later, we're out shopping for buildings and the rest is history.
I find your story unbelievably fascinating, especially right now, because like in the news, you hear a lot about going to college versus being technical, right? And I recently saw a video about a woman saying, I have my degree and I have my master's degree, and her spouse would be comparable to a collision repair shop and didn't go to college, and she was talking about how much I think he quadruples her salary and he has no student debt and all that kind of stuff. So your story is like becoming so unbelievably relevant now because of kind of how education is going and things like that as well. So I just love your story for that reason.
I talk to people about that a lot of times. Not that there's a thing in the world, with going to university, getting any kind of degree. But just to be honest with you, that wasn't a fit for me. I graduated high school and my parents didn't go to college, and he was kind of hoping I would. And he was just like, hey, if you want to go to college, I'll pay for it. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I tried it for just a community college here local for 4, 5, 6 months. And I just kept getting drawn back to, what it is that I love to do. And I felt like I was good at, and I was like, this just isn't the route for me. I tell people a lot when we're talking about this very thing. I was like, I went to the University of Real Life Stuff.
Yeah, right. And probably learned better than you could have ever gotten in an MBA, right? As you've gone through business. Mm-hmm. So how did you take your business from just a couple of you working on cars to now you have expansion going on, you have a full, I don't know when the last time was you actually worked on the car yourself, right? So how did you just kind of tell us a little bit about how you grew and scaled it like you have?
Okay. So again, kind of a short version of the story is that I opened it up in 1998. And honestly, it went, of course, obviously that's a whole different day and time. It just seems so long ago now, and it just went by like that. But we started out, we leased a building. It was my business partner and myself. We were the accounts receivable, accounts payable, the, working on the cars, the whole nine, answering the phone, which we all know, with an independent business, that it's very tough like that's getting started, but we had to manage and push our way through. But what it was surprisingly effective for us, because early on we were staying busy. Everything was just rocking right along. It almost got to the point to where, let's say 12 months in, we were like, okay, we thought this was going to be a little rocky in the beginning, but it was fine. And then I think a year and a half later, we seen just a little bit of a turn to where it never stopped, completely, but we just slowed down just a little bit. That was a little rocky. Then things picked back up and had been picking up ever since. But as far as the growing with employees and stuff, again, it was just the two of us. So, then things were different with people looking for jobs. Obviously now, we would get calls and people come in a lot, and we work on a lot of cars because we do things a little different than some other places do, as far as with warranties and just, we were particular about who we would have working with us as far as technicians. So after a little while, we hired one guy. That worked out fine. And then we just kept getting busier and busier, had to hire more people. And then it just started expanding. So we leased our building to start with for the first year, because he and I talked about it, say, hey, before jumping in with both feet, let's just see how this is going to work. 12 months came and went like that. And we're like, okay, we don't want to throw no more money away in rent. Let's just go ahead and buy this place. We bought it. And right directly next to us on both sides of our initial building, there was two other pieces of property. And I remember this conversation like as if we had it yesterday, and it was 20 something years ago. We were like, man, how cool would it be if one day we could buy this other building over here and turn that into our body shop, make this our paint shop, and this over here our office. And then about 10-ish years later, that's exactly what we did. We had to expand to that portion. And we talk about it and laugh about it now sometimes, but it was just like anything else, just a lot of hard work, working till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, just whatever it took to make it happen.
So sometimes, like, you ended up at a turning point, right? Where it was either we're going to grow and we're going to hire people, or we're just going to say no to the next car that comes in, right?
Yes.
What was your thought process on expanding versus just, no, we're just going to do what we can do, and that's just going to be it?
I think it was just the amount of business that we were seeing and generating, and it's funny about that. You asked that question also, because I have an uncle that lives out of state that, early on he would, come visit us and check us out, was like, hey man, things are going great. He's like, why aren't y'all hiring more people? And honestly, my answer to that was, we're afraid to turn loose of the reins. We know how our skill level, and we're very, very particular in what we do and how we do it. And we're just like, if we have other people here, we're not for sure if it's going to be the same quality and this and that. And he's like, man, if you get them in there, you can train them and just show them how it's supposed to be done. We're like, yeah, I don't know. We'll stick with this for a while. And we did that for as many years as we could. Honestly, there was probably until roughly 2006, 8, somewhere right along in there, as we seen where the transition was going to have to happen, where it just to take us to the next level that we were trying to get to. And by there we were able, and that's right along in the time where we made the first addition to the company, purchasing the building next door, because that just gave us another I don't know, 2,500 square feet, to work on more vehicles and all. And then naturally with another building, we need more people. So that it's right about it in that time is when that happened.
So you just automatically were going to grow, like it just your mindset was we're going to, but you also did just say, right, that you were like, oh, how do I let go of the reins?
Yeah.
For someone who's struggling to let go of the reins, just like you did on like, well, is anybody going to do it just like I do it? What advice would you give them?
Honestly, is just really it's having to take the plunge.
Just try it.
It's kind of like what I hear about people talking about retirement. You can't go put a date on the calendar like, okay, on this day I'm going to make it happen. It just don't work that way. As far as but what we've been through, but it just got to a point to where I even still to this day like talking to people that have been doing things that I do longer. I was like, hey, can you offer a guy some advice? I'm trying to get to where you're at. And it's like, look, you have to build a strong team, with the training and procedures and different stuff like that, because that's our foundation. I believe that's with any company is your team. You know what I mean? The people that are working with you. And we had some guys that really bought into our culture and what we do and how we do it. And we still have several of those core guys that we started with, back then working with us. And a lot of times they'll have their uniforms on and he just in town in public is like, oh, you work at the body shop. And it's funny that we're talking about this now because one of my guys that's been with us for about 19 years, he's like, man, I just feel like I'm proud to work at the body shop when I'm out.
Proud to wear that shirt.
Like, oh yeah, you work over at that place. And he's like, that makes me feel good. So, and it made me feel good for him to tell me that. But that's why I said that the culture and just the work environment and stuff like that. But really just having to take the plunge, because if somebody has expectations and knowing kind of where they want their business to go, you've just got to just roll with it and just make it happen.
Try. Yeah, try and see what happens.
Kind of like
I find it works out most of the time if you try and make it. Yeah,
it's similar. What I've heard you mention is that you just go. You run into this wall, back up. Nope, we got to go over here and go over here, and it's basically just like that. I don't think it's a one size fits all, and the way it worked for me, maybe for somebody else, but it's just one of those things. You just got to jump into it and make it happen.
Yeah. So you do things differently in your shop. What is that? What does it mean to do something differently when it comes to body work and collision repair?
Okay. So mainly by that and what we do, working on collision related vehicles. I mean, it's not rocket science. We're not doing like heart surgery. Basically what it boils down, and this I believe can be in any industry, whether it's, construction, electrical, plumbing, it's basically taking pride in the work that you do, maybe making sure something's right or straight or looks the way it's supposed to, even if it's behind another panel. We do a lot of, QC checks on our stuff, during the process, after the process, once it's finished up, and just having the guys knows like, what's different for us. And I feel the reason that we stay as busy as we are because the size of our shop and independent owned business, yes. A lot of our customers let us know, it's like, hey, we just get a whole different feel when we come in here and talk to you guys versus going to a dealership, franchise place or whatever, where you maybe have just a manager, not necessarily the person that's like really, really in charge and behind it and responsible for it, to where it's like, okay, yeah, that may be good enough or whatever. We're just taking a lot of pride in what we do. And sometimes, in the past, a lot of the guys that are with us now know, our procedures and what's going to fly and what's not, because it's basically, we explain to our customers that if it passes our QC test, we know it's going to yours, because we're just super, super picky about our stuff. We've always been that way and just feel like that's what's got us to this point.
So it is going to look the best humanly possible when it comes out of your shop.
That's the plan. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Like anybody else, we sometimes make a mistake here and there, but we just jump right on it and try to make it right, just whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when people are going through let's say, knock on wood, this doesn't happen to me. Nonetheless, I just got into an accident. How do I choose? What is kind of the process to get to you? Because I feel like sometimes you think, call your insurance company and they're going to tell you where to go. Kind of what does that buying process look like for you?
Okay. Funny that you asked that too, because I just went through this in my presentation last week in our chapter meeting. So the way that the process works, and again, knock on wood, don't anybody have any accidents, but so we tell people a lot. It's like, well, it's like the doctor, things are going to happen. You got to go somewhere. So generally right now, and I even turn around and I'll transition that question back to the person. I was like, okay, Megan, if you did have an accident, what would you do? And generally what I've heard in the past is about 3 or 4 different things. First thing, I'm going to ask a coworker, somebody that you're working around. Hey, I know you recently were in a little fender bender. Who did you use? Okay. Ask a neighbor, a coworker, family member. And then obviously everybody knows you can Google it, to look at reviews and different things like that. And then the other thing that you mentioned, maybe to call your insurance company or call the dealership that you purchased the vehicle from. Fortunately for us, we've been in business for a little while now. We have good working relationships with all the local insurance company and the agencies in town. I mean, we do work for all the different companies, but now, like for Alpha Insurance, I guess give them a little plug. We're a direct repair shop for Alpha Insurance. So what that means, if you have Alpha and you call them and they're usually like, hey, I don't know what to do. I've never been in an accident before. What should we do? Their answer to them or to the customer will be, well, hey, we have a list of providers here. And, one that we often use is the body shop in Decatur, but they'll immediately follow that up with, hey, now you don't have to use the body shop. You go wherever you want to, because in that industry, it's kind of steering work and they don't want to do that. They'll just kind of mention, it's like, hey, this is somebody that we've had good luck with. They're a direct repair shop for us. Maybe stop by there, take a look, see if you think if it's a good fit. If not, go wherever you want to. And a lot of times, and I ask my customers this, and that's exactly what it's like. Well, I called Alpha and they said to use these guys, and I wanted to check on you just a little bit more. So I asked a couple friends and I went on Facebook and the body shop kept coming up, the body shop, the body shop, the body shop. And we're like, that's kind of the way I want it.
Exactly. and that's how we built it that way. We built it that way.
Like, well, after checking with that many people and that many, referrals, we thought this would be the place to come. And I was like, well, that's what we were shooting for.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a funny story that you told me about getting confused with another body shop that was in Decatur, that was a clothing store.
Yeah. I forgot I even told you about that.
You tell me about that. I love that story.
Yeah.
Because the clothing store was not what you do, but you got calls from it pretty regularly, which was a very funny story.
Mm-hmm. That lasted about, probably going on about 2 years. And this was, wow, that was a really long time ago. I can't even remember what year, probably in the mid 2000s, early, something like that. And, some of the women listeners may remember it as a clothing shop in the mall called the Body Shop. Yeah. And they just sold from swimwear to whatever, anyways, we would get calls there for a while. It was several times a week. Hey, we're just calling to see if y'all have the pink polka dot bikinis on sale or out yet. And immediately I get on the phone. I was like, what? And then after about the 10th one, it became a game. Then I was like, no, or, hey, I left such and such in the dressing room. I was like, nope, wrong body shop.
That's so great.
For crash cars, but not in any women's apparel.
That was just one that stuck with me. I love that. I just absolutely love that story. I think it's so funny at how it all comes together. But also that you were the first, like you were the number that showed up. Also it shows what kind of marketing you've done as well.
Yeah. So, and it's funny how we came up with the name, because I get that often asked, and my business partner and I, we're like, okay, we got to come up with a name. Generally somebody's going to use their last name, but with having a partnership, it couldn't be Hunt and Murray Body Shop, or we just didn't think that would work. So we were just talking, and honestly, he was just like, yeah, he's like, really not that big of a deal to me. He's like, you can come up with a name, whatever. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, and it's like, I'm not just the Body Shop. And he's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And something else that just kind of the byproduct or how it happened from that is we wind up winning a lot of jobs just simply for the fact of the name. And here's how it works. And I had no clue about this until way later, is that when somebody was in an accident and the tow truck, the wrecker would come like, hey, we got to take our car to the body shop.
And the wrecker would be like, I know where that is. When they're using the term generically.
They're thinking, hey, I got to take it somewhere to get it worked on. And we're like, well, you said to the body shop, and that's this guy's company. That's where we took it. So
that is such awesome luck.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so brilliant.
Yeah.
If you are deciding to set your name, maybe just calling it what it is a good idea.
Yeah, it worked then.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. So you are a member of BNI, hence why you were on the show, right? So tell us a little bit about your BNI story.
Okay, so I've been a member for about 4.5 years now, and was introduced to it actually through another marketing company that we hired and got ready to start looking at doing some marketing with. And the guy that was the salesperson, we just kind of made friends and had lunch a couple of times talking about some different stuff. And he's like, hey, I'm involved with this networking group that you might want to come and check out. And so I did. And just one thing led to another, and it's been a great fit ever since. And I guess this would maybe be part of where we transition to talking about how we have another company in town.
Yes,
we also own a real estate company, a full service brokerage company. So the marketing was actually being done for that company. My business partner and I have both companies in town. He pretty well runs that, and I run the real estate company. But anyways, that's where the marketing that I was looking for and having done. So I joined BNI and then the first year, everything was going great, meeting a lot of new contacts, I think during then visited a couple of other chapters. So it was working great, planting seeds is all about what we do, So anyways, after 10, 11 months, when it came time to be able to renew, I learned, because I was just learning a lot about the way the program works with BNI, and that was the transition to, if you're going to renew under the same company, if you're doing something different, whatever the case was. So that's when I found out that was an option. So I just thought, I was like, well, this seems to be working really great for the real estate company. Maybe on year number 2, I'll switch and put my other hat on and represent the collision repair side. And I did that. And it just kind of was, basically say like night and day difference. It went from, and again, made several good contacts and networking things, representing the commercial real estate seat. But when it transitioned to the collision repair center, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, statistically and just the way that things work, there's a lot more people that may have a little door ding, a little fender bender, maybe get a windshield busted or hail damage or whatever the case was. So I seen that the referrals and thank you for closed business just went through the roof and changed. And I was like, maybe I might be onto something here. So when it came time to renew, I continued representing the collision center.
Well, and that's a really great point, right? It's easier to give a referral for collision repair just because it's going to happen to a lot more people, right?
Yes.
Than someone saying, I need an office building, or I want to invest, or any of those kinds of things as well. So it becomes much easier. I would think, if you told me you have to get a referral today, do you want to go out and try and get one for commercial real estate, or do you want to go out and get one for body shop? I'd be like, body shop all day long. I can make that one happen.
Chances are you might find somebody that's had a little ding in their car that they've been putting off for a little while, that you would be able to help facilitate that relationship or something, versus going out, leasing a space or buying a commercial building. Not saying at all that there's anything obviously wrong with commercial real estate, because I know that there's a lot of members that represent that and doing great at it. But I just found, the two companies that we own, and maybe in our area and just different connection, but just seems to be working great for me.
Well, and the number of referrals you're going to get from a collision repair versus commercial real estate. Yes. Now, obviously, commercial real estate makes you a whole lot more money per transaction on top of it. But it just, I can definitely see how that works. So you really believe, and I believe too, that BNI is not for everyone. So say a little bit about that, because I love hearing that from other people's perspectives.
Yeah, well, what we've seen, and we talk a lot about in our chapter meetings, is that and I think you've mentioned as well, is not necessarily looking for just butts and seats. We want to make sure it's somebody that's going to be a good fit. And what we've seen in our chapter in the last, of course, we all know in the last year and a half, everything has just been kind of turned upside down. But even with that, and I'll use one example for a company that we had in the past was an HVAC company, which every chapter needs one of those. But anyways, it was a younger guy, super great guy. We're still giving him referrals today. But he was just a one-man operation. And we kind of thought, we were wondering how that was going to work out in the beginning. Again, did great work, super nice guy. He's got a lot of business out of our group, but it just came to the point to where it took about 4 to 6 months for this to surface. And what would happen is every Wednesday morning at 7:00 when we had our chapter meeting, it got to where, hey, I either can go to this meeting or I can go service this air condition from maybe somebody in the group gave me a referral, and your mother, your aunt is over there in the heat waiting for me to go charge your air conditioner. So do I go do that, or do I go sit in on this meeting? So what we've come to find, and like I said, that may not be the best fit for everybody at a particular time in their company, is getting started out. And what we found is that, maybe the 1 or 2 man operation may be a little more difficult, because again, it's going to enter into the scenario of, time management. Where do I need to be? You know what I mean? And that started becoming an issue for him. So he actually, we suggested to him, was like, well, is there somebody else that could maybe come and represent your company for you? He tried that with his wife, but it just really wasn't the same. She didn't kind of know the ins and outs of the business to be able to be a good representation for his company in the meeting. So after talking more about it, and we had seen some of that in the past also, and not saying that, you can draw a picture or paint a box. Okay, it has to be this kind of company, this many people, and be in business this long. It's not necessarily that. It's not I don't think a one size fits all, but, and I believe that is going to be left up to a lot of times to maybe the membership, when you get to interview and talking to the person and be like, hey, you think this is really a commitment, because we're going to be looking for you every week, and, different stuff like that. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, it is. And then to my previous questions to you, right, was he interested in scaling and trying to have, a bunch of crews and a bunch of trucks, or was he, and you're right, it is, the more I do this business, the more it's just what you just never know. There's not a perfect equation to, you're going to be successful and you're not going to be, or you're going to get too busy, or it's just a matter of what do you want to do, and how can we ultimately help as well.
And that also goes back to something that Glenda and Sarah and I talked about the other day, is what I've seen and heard, and I can't remember who I heard this phrase from, but when I heard it, it made perfect sense. Is failure by success, is by getting too big too fast. And that was, I think, what almost happened to this HVAC guy, because he was getting just referrals a lot just through the group. And then, like in anything else, it was just expanding from other places, to where it kind of got to the point, it's like, man, I've almost got more than I can do. So I've seen companies really put themselves in a bind, whether through advertising, marketing, word of mouth, whatever the case is. But if you're a 1-2 man show and you can only service so many projects a week or a month, and if you've got 50 coming in but you're only able to do 20, somebody's not going to be very happy. You know what I mean? So it's just like the perfect scenario and formula of having to get that put together to make it work right. And like what you mentioned before, you try this, if that don't work, well, maybe I have to back up and try to do it this way. And it's tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people outside of Decatur, obviously, if a collision repair shop was thinking about becoming a part of BNI, what would you say what advice would you give to them?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Just don't hesitate. Jump in. You need to do it for sure. And again, to where their business is, whether it's time in business or employees. Now, I will say this, and 100% honest, for the year number 1 through 3 of us starting out, it would have been next to impossible for me to join BNI and really be beneficial for the group or myself, because I would have been just like the guy with the HVAC company.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you've got room to expand and you are really looking to
Yes,
grow, this
yes,
is a
for
great way
sure.
to do
To
it.
either have a good company representative to be able to be present at the meetings, or if you're able to have your staff in place to where you're able to get away from the office for a couple hours a week, for whatever the case is, and able to make that commitment. I would for sure, 1000%, say that would be a great move for them, because all the different connections and networking that you're able to do, because like what we talk about, all our members and all chapters is like, it's our job, I feel like, to make them little mini salespeople for us.
Absolutely. 100%. Excellent. Well, we told you that this was going to go by fast, and we have gone a half an hour. So thank you so much for being here. I love your story. For BNI members in this area who are listening to this one, Brian is a great person to have a one-to-one with. Huge breadth of knowledge, not only about, obviously body work and collision repair, but also how he thinks about his business is so you can learn a lot from it. You can just learn a lot from it. So I highly recommend getting to know Ryan for sure. And thank you so much, Ryan, for being here. I've had so much fun getting to know you over the last year. And then and like I said, I love your story of your company in general, much less your BNI story as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
You're so welcome. All right. And next week, it's just me again, live. We're going to be talking about just how to make your business better, especially during this time when things tend to be uncertain. So join me next week for a solo, and I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week.